Welcome back to another video, guys. Today we're checking out a game that I've been looking forward to. Throne of Liberty is a brand new MMORPG that just dropped by NCSoft and published by Amazon Games, I believe. Now I wanted to look at the PC port itself, see how it is, the settings, check out the upscaling, quality, performance, and I ran into some things and I have some suggestions how to make your experience even better. So without further ado, let's dive into it and see what it's like. Just a very quick overview of the game. I've only played for a little, but as a seasoned MMORPG player, the game looks absolutely fantastic. As a matter of fact, I always used to think about what future MMORPGs would look like back when World of Warcraft was very popular and I used to play it a ton. Well, this is a very good example of a future good-looking MMORPG. As far as accessibility, it's very easy to get into. Well, first of all, it's free to play. And the character creator is very good. You can create a very nice looking characters. You don't have to pick a class. You choose a weapon and that's the class, and you can have two weapons on you at the same time. So you can have two classes on you at the same time. You can fast travel from waypoint to waypoint that you discover. You can run fast by turning into a wolf. You don't have to buy this. It's given to you straight away, which is, again, very easy to get into. So if you're curious about MMORPGs, I highly suggest checking it out. Why wouldn't you? Anyway, let's get on with the point of this video though, looking at the PC performance and the features that it has. Okay, so let's begin with the settings first. For this video, we're going to focus entirely on 4K. We do have all the upscalers, Nvidia DLSS, FSR, and XeSS. Unfortunately, we don't have FSR frame generation, and it is FSR 2, but for DLSS, I believe it is the latest version, and it also has support for DLSS frame generation. Now, the only downside I don't like is that you can't use frame generation at native resolution. You must use DLSS upscaling, but actually DLSS looks really good in this game. I would use it regardless, just because it actually, I think it improves even over native a little. But as far as the graphical settings, well, you have a ton of stuff. Now, we're not going to focus too much on this, although we will go over it slightly later on in the video, because there's something I found that helps with performance a lot. But other than that, for this video, we're going to disable all the lens flare, chromatic abomination, depth of field, all that stuff. But other than that, everything will be on epic. Well, let's go ahead and start with native 4K Ultra. This is the main city you'll arrive in after you finish the tutorial. Here's where you'll encounter real players. And what you're seeing here, it's mostly real players with a few NPCs, vendors, and that sort of thing. As you could imagine, this is a fairly demanding area, especially on the CPU front. If you look, our 7800 X3D is being utilized around 60%, which is quite a bit, although it is understandable. I'm actually curious to see how Intel CPUs would do in this particular case. I have a feeling that Intel CPUs might do a little bit better, but we're still at this particular point, we are GPU bound, so we're going to check out some DLSS. Now later in the video, I will share a couple tips that I found to actually help with getting a more fluid gameplay experience, which is personally how I would play the game. But for now, let's go ahead and take a look at DLSS, because like I said, DLSS actually does a really good job in this game. In my opinion, it does an even better job than native, cleaning things up and giving you more FPS. So let's check it out. So we've gone ahead and set DLSS to quality, and our FPS actually went way up. Previously, we were averaging 82 FPS and 51 for 1% lows. Now, if you looking at our GPU utilization, we've now dropped to the mid 80s, especially in this area where there's a ton of players. So here we've become CPU bound basically. So if you are playing on a lower end CPU and you're getting slightly lower FPS in the city, I wouldn't worry about it too much. As long as you're doing okay while you're questing and doing dungeons and stuff like that, it should be fine, right? So here in this particular case, drop into DLSS balance wouldn't really do all that much for us, but let's check it out anyway. And like I said, guys, if you look at DLSS quality on the left and DLSS balance on the right, it's the same run. Our average and 1% lows are practically identical, because here we are bound by the capabilities of our CPU. So this makes sense. The only other thing that we can do though is enable frame generation. That should give us some extra frames. Although 1% lows will probably be the same, but let's check it out. Alright guys, so here we go. We've now enabled frame generation on top of DLSS quality, and yeah, we're now getting quite a bit more frames. Although not total real frames, it definitely looks smooth if you have the display that has the capability to display all those frames. I personally don't. I'm using a 120 Hz OLED TV, so I don't really notice the difference. I probably wouldn't use it, but we were averaging 117 FPS with DLSS quality, and with frame generation on top, we've reached 141 average FPS. And for 1% lows, we averaged 72 FPS with DLSS quality, and with frame generation on top, actually went up to 80. So we did gain a bit more 1% lows as well. So overall, definitely a smoother experience. Now I decided to take a look at FSR as well since I'm here anyway, and while the performance metrics are pretty much identical within margin of error between DLSS and FSR quality, you would expect that to be the case. Where they differ quite a bit is the image quality. FSR does a good enough job, but it does have a bit of ghosting, more ghosting I should say. But even more distracting is transparency effects. There's this, like, I don't know how to explain, like a rice cake crunchy look to it that can be quite distracting. So yeah, that definitely stood out to me. And remember that we are playing at 4K here, so this is best case scenario when you're targeting such high resolution. So I don't know what it would look like at lower resolutions. Probably a bit more noticeable, I would say. Now, what about the rest of the game though? Outdoors, questing, that sort of thing. Well, the questing in the outdoors becomes less CPU bound. I guess that makes sense. So here we are more GPU bound than anything, but it's still not too bad. For example, right here, we're at native 4K Ultra. And I mean, yeah, we're using a 4090, but still with maxed out graphical settings, this is actually pretty good performance. Just remember that the newest AAA games, even on a 4090, sometimes have trouble hitting 60 FPS, you know, the Unreal Engine 5 type of game. So the fact that we're getting close to 90 here, that's actually pretty good. I would say the game is fairly well optimized, although there is parts where you can experience hitches here and there, which you can see that on the frame time. But again, like I said, I will share my tip on how you can get a locked, smooth experience in a little bit. The worst that I've noticed when it comes to frame rate hitching or performance hitching is usually when you travel between areas. Like now, you'll see that in the frame time, but it usually stabilizes. But again, I will show you my tip how you can avoid all of this too. Now here's something that was like a slap to the face for me that reminded me of my Starfield Shattered Space performance issues. And that was rainy weather, guys. Look at the performance. It took a nosedive just because it started raining. So there has to be quite a few people that must be frustrated with this. I mean, look at this. This is the same area with rain weather on the right and clear weather on the left. Same settings, native 4K, and a huge difference in performance. So this is quite unusual. So I wanted to find out if there's a particular setting causing this, and I did. And you'll kind of be surprised which one it is. Alright, so we're getting 54 FPS here during the stormy weather. Let's go to settings, quality, and it was screen space reflections, guys. If we go from epic to high, it goes all the way up to 80. And I did a bit of research on this. I went to the water to try to see if there was like a noticeable difference as far as visuals go. And I didn't really see much of a difference between high and epic. It looked pretty much the same. So I would suggest that keeping screen space reflections to high, because you never know when this is going to affect the performance again in another area. So yeah, this was the most unusual thing I found. Well, let's try setting it back to epic. And there we go. We went from 80 back down to 54 FPS. So yeah, kind of crazy. Now my next and last recommendation slash tip, if you will, instead of leaving the frame rate unlocked the way it is right now, I mean, yeah, you get decent performance, but you can make it more fluid by using a frame rate lock. And now this will apply to me with the type of hardware that I have, but you can apply it on yours as well, just by targeting different resolutions or different forms of upscaling. Now, this is native 4K with the unlocked frame rate. If I go ahead and lock the frame rate with RivaTuner Statistics Server, which is what I personally like to use, you get a pretty much locked 60. So this is what I would target if I wanted to play at native 4K, no upscaling or anything. And I mean, it maintains pretty much 99% of the time that frame time is nice and flat, even if you were to go inside the city. Alternatively though, which is what I'm more than likely to do, is just use DLSS quality and target 90 FPS. Now you can play with the settings some more and tweak things to how you like, but I've always preferred using RivaTuner Statistics Server to cap my FPS. I know you can cap the FPS through the game, you can cap it through your Nvidia driver or AMD driver. I've found that the RivaTuner Statistics Server usually does a better job. It's a bit smoother, even though the latency might be a little higher. So people say, I'm not really that sensitive to it. So to me, it just plays pretty well. And this is basically the way I would play the game. I would leave screen space reflections to high just because of what we saw. And DLSS quality, 90 FPS cap, I'm personally very happy with that. No problem at all. Now, is it 100% perfect? No, I mean, there will be a hitch here and there. And once you make it into the city, yeah, you're not going to maintain a locked 90 because the city is CPU bound, especially right now, which is, there's a lot more players here than there was before. So yeah, once you hit CPU limitations, obviously you're not going to be able to maintain that locked FPS. But for the most part in the open world, you will. But anyway, guys, this was my coverage of the game. I'm very happy actually to see a new MMORPG, and it looks like something I would like to play. It's a good looking game. You can create good looking characters if you want to. It's easy to get into. It's free, most importantly, and very accessible too. I mean, you can actually even use a controller, which is something I just took a look at now. Actually, the game is on console too. Now, I don't know why I'd want to play an MMORPG with a controller, but you can, and that's cool, I guess. But anyway, guys, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Feel free to suggest something. If you guys are interested on a CPU-focused video for this game, I guess it all depends how this video does, right? Because CPU benchmarks can take a bit of time, but I don't mind doing it if, you know, people have a use for it. I guess that's how I look at it. But either way, give the video a like if you liked it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.